So how do we the section? Last time when we had said, ki suppose this is your compound wall, this is your site. This is your plot boundary. There is an adjacent building which is again over here, say, okay, which goes taller. The MCGM spells out that the basement can be, there should be a minimum distance of 1.5. So if the adjacent building was also 1.5, you are hardly having, say, 3 meters between the basements of the two buildings, right? Now, when you have this 3 meters, what all goes into this? Now, it is also the interpretation that the basement wall should be at 1.5 meters, right? If I have this basement wall as 1.5 meters and all the shore piling are placed outside it, as I said last time, you will not have any space left for your trees, for your services, and all that, right? So, number one is to consider all the dimensions which are required for your surface drainage. Okay. Number two, all the requirement of the cables that are going to come in, all the requirements of plumbing that is going to come in, all the requirement of any other kind of services which needs laying out, surface drain, the even the sewerage drain. So all those drains, whether they are you are able to accommodate them within this space, or you're going to have it suspended beneath the slab over here. Apart from that, it is the vegetation that you want to have, right? So these are the five things that you always need to consider when you are designing or giving this dimension. Okay. Apart from that, you also need to worry about the collapse of the adjacent building, or stability of the foundation of the adjacent building. So in this position, what is going to happen? Okay. If you are having a shallow foundation, your ground will go like this. You will excavate, okay, and then after that, what do you start doing? Straight away start building the wall. Yeah, is it? Anyone? I am unable to swap between the screens, so I cannot. I'm not going to take names because I'm completely on the screen only. So it would help if somebody volunteers and there is a dialogue between between me and the class.
Whatever it is, guys, हाँ तो हाँ, ना तो ना.
I don't know if I subscribe to monologue. Guys, it's okay if you are if you if you feel that this is not important. I shouldn't be going into it. I'll stop it. We can take something else.
We don't know actually.
So if we are, if you don't know whether I should take the lecture or not, or the
No, no. I
question.
said I don't know the answer to your question.
No, the I'll repeat the question. It is when you sorry, just a sec. Uh, I asked the question that when you are when in the sequence of construction. So we are talking about the sequence of construction now. The number one, the decision ki, okay, this is to be excavated, the outside wall of the basement is going to come at whatever 1.5 meters, 2 meters, 3 meters, whatever you decide. Minimum is 1.5, which is mandated by the BMC. But as we discussed last time, you might come to a conclusion, you know, I need 3 meters on this side, I need 2 meters on this side. So whatever that design decision you have taken. So this is the outer edge of the wall, okay, which is whatever you have given. I'm presently putting it as 2.5 meters. Okay. So the contractor, you will set it out, okay, this is going to be my line. Okay. So what do you expect the contractor to start doing? He will start excavation, correct? Will he start the excavation over here?
Yeah.
And not over here?
Uh, uh, Ideally, he should take a 2 meter offset, maybe, I guess, for the to accommodate the pile depths, or in
No, we are not talking
or
about piles. I'm
no, in
first
normal
talking
foundation.
about what you have already done in your third year, the regular
Yeah,
basements.
yeah.
So in the regular basement, it's a recap. That's why those questions. In the regular basement, when you did in your third year, what is the sequence of operation that you visualized? Of course, I don't know whether you couldn't go to the site, so the experience, the real site experience, wouldn't be there. But through the lectures that you attended, and through your understanding of the cross section and the drawings that you must have given some thought to what is the sequence of operation. No? See, I always maintain that the subject of construction has about four parts. Number one is the idea itself, of course, the schematic. So you have the structural idea, right? Structure. Number two is about your details, joineries and details and all, right? Number three is how those details weather. So details and weathering is actually related, but how those details weather. Okay. Number four is your representation of it in terms of drawings and all. And the fifth is your sequence of the construct. Now, as far as the subject is concerned, ideally all these other things we can talk about in other, except for details. So weathering is talked about in EBS, structure is talked about in theory of structures, representation is talked about in ARD, and you are already doing it in the studio. Details and sequence of construction ideally should be focused on maximum in the construction class. Okay, fair enough. So if that is the focus, then what is the sequence of construct that you imagine when you are having to build a regular normal basement which you have already studied in your third year, and you have already done it? Many of you have done the retaining walls in your IDS studio also.
Yeah.
अरे बोलो ना, कुछ तो बोलो पहले. पहले सेटिंग आउट होगा, ये सेटिंग आउट करोगे, सेटिंग आउट के बाहर कुछ लाइन, मतलब जो एक्सकवेशन की लाइन मार्क करोगे, एक्सकवेशन की लाइन मार्क करने के बाद एक्सकवेशन शुरू करोगे. लेकिन एक्सकवेशन शुरू करने से पहले यू हैव टू इंश्योर दैट द एक्सकवेशन इज नॉट गोइंग टू अफेक्ट the compound wall foundation. So you'll probably prop the compound wall. All the measures which are necessary to stabilize the ground and all will be taken. Then excavation will start. Correct. So if the excavation starts, whether it is either 1.5, if you want to leave an excavation, you need a space beneath it, depending on whether you are going to do the waterproofing from outside. If you are doing the waterproofing from outside, you will need at least a 1 meter of space for a person to stand and plaster and do the working of waterproofing. Correct. So the excavation will account for that. If you are doing from outside, then once you excavate it, say this depth is 1.8 meters. Okay, the required depth is 1.8 meters, and you will excavate it because you need to have the raft and all that. You will excavate to a depth of say 2.25 meters or 2.3 meters. Okay, so once this excavation has happened, then what are the layers, what are the sequence of operations that you will go for? And again, I'm telling you, this is not deep foundations. This is a common understanding for both your regular shallow foundation as well as deep foundation. These are just your regular sequences that you need to organize on the site. Okay. Then we'll talk about the deep foundation में what are the additional challenges and all. But primarily shallow foundation में क्या challenges आते हैं? More than the
After
challenges
the
is
excavation is done, the column grid should be laid out, right?
okay. So you laid out the column grid and then
The PCC bed.
so column grid will be laid out on the soil, or there will be some kind of a leveling layer that you will put.
Yeah, exactly. There should be a leveling done to achieve
Rubble soling, no?
yeah,
So
exactly.
why rubble soil?
To have a firm base so that the soil is even at all places.
No, but rubble soling, there is a difference between rubble soling and rubble soling and stone pitching. There is a difference. What is that?
Pitching, at least I have.
Yeah, we haven't heard about pitching.
नहीं, अरे stone pitching is done below the PCC bed, and the rubber soiling is done when we are like near the plinth beams.
But why is that? What is the difference? What is the function of rubble? Why do we do
It
rubble?
aids in sort of making a level surface because you have the rubble kind of pierces into the soil, and so the tamping is it's a lot easier to kind of ram the earth below.
In fact, rubble, wherever you put it, they are all jagged edge. It's almost impossible to get a level surface in rubble. When the stones are thrown and they land on their natural bed. So they are always pokey. So all the the triangular portion of the rubble will always stick out. There is no way of hammering it and leveling it out. You have to put smaller stones to fill in those gaps. Right? But before that, what is rubble soling? What is stone pitching? These terms are loosely used one against other, but as far as I don't want you to get into the semantics of it so strongly, but let's understand what is the role of a rubble. A rubble or an aggregate is a dry layer. So when there is a soil layer, you have okay, you have say you have a plinth, right? You have a plinth, you have the foundation of it, it is going deeper, and you have a PCC. This is I'm talking about a continuous footing, right? So you fill up the soil up to a particular level, and you allow it to settle, or you ram it, you compact it. So this level, what was originally over here, it is going to come down. So the original level will settle down, and you will get a layer or gap over here. So this is a compacted earth. Above the compacted earth, you always mention as rubble soling, right? Correct. And you will have these smaller metal in between. So this will be level. Okay, and rubble soling always comes with a dimension. So you either mention it as 230 or 300 or 350. Okay, this comes with these kind of dimensions. You never see rubble soling which is 100 right? So what is the purpose of doing this versus you will find that beneath this foundation, suppose the mud is not compact, there is lot of water or moisture and all, you will sometimes find that beneath this PCC there is a specification of stone pitching, and that is about 100 Okay, so why do you have this as 100 Both are stone, 100 stone pitching, and why do you have this as rubble soling? Any guesses? Anyone? This is very important because these are the first layers of any construct of the foundation. Okay, any foundation, whether it's a continuous footing, whether it is a pad footing, whether it is a your raft, whether it is your plinths. So all those first layers, these steps become important, particularly in RCC and masonry. No one,
The
at least some attempt.
doesn't the concrete go into the gaps of the stone and then solidifies as like a monolithic?
No, you're talking about this or at the plinth, because above plinth also there is a PCC layer, but this is 230 or 300 or 350. This is 100 only, or sometimes in some cases you specify it as 150. What is this? Why is this difference? Why is this not 230?
Maybe
Or why is
because
this not 100?
maybe stone pitching is mostly for the leveling, and the rubble soiling also has something to do with maybe uh load transferred by deformation or as a base or something.
Full marks. Who's that? I can't see.
Oh,
You just announced your name.
Sana.
Anyway, so, so that's perfect answer. So basically, stone has two roles to play. Number one is it forms a impervious layer between the soil and the whatever masonry you're doing. So number one is whenever you are, whether it is lime mortar or cement mortar, the cement and lime will have a tendency to leach into the soil when it is wet. So you don't want that. You don't want the cement to leach into the soil. So you give a dry layer. Okay. Now many a times when the stone is not available, in some areas when the stone is not available, people use compact. You ram it in such a way. You put the sand or you put some kind of this. There are some times where people use straight away. They use plastic sheets also. Okay, so whatever layer, this is important. It is important for me to just put a impervious layer, whether I do it with plastic, whether I do with stones, whether I do it with sand or gravel. I just need to ensure that the cement that is mixed in the PCC, that that doesn't leach out tremendously. That's all. Okay, otherwise the foundation, this cross section of the foundation is anyway designed to take the load stresses, and the footing is designed to transfer the load into the ground. Okay, so there is no need of a thickness of a stone, waste the stone, imagining it to be a the either stone dala to either. Whereas in this case, this stone is supporting the slab or this particular floor between one wall to the other, and invariably that wall is either 3 meters or 3.5 meters or 6 meters or 3.5 meters or 4 meters. The larger it goes, if you have spans which are beyond 4 meters or something, then you will need to go for 300 mm. If you have larger, then that spans, depending on the span between the plinth wall to the plinth wall or plinth beam to the plinth beam, the thickness of this rubble is also going to change. And that is also the reason why, if you have larger spans, 6 meter spans and all, at least in the plinths you break it down to 3 meters, so that your rubble soling dimension does not exceed 230. Understood? This point is clear. So in soling, it is doing dual purpose. It is not only preventing the cement from leaching into the soil below, it is also acting as a structural system. Okay, remember that there is no reinforcement over here. Okay, so it is acting as a structural system. It is giving the stability for your live load as well as the the dead load of the slab and the PCC. If you don't have this rubble soling, always there will be a settlement, then there will be cracks on the floor of the ground floor. Is this clear? Yeah. Now let's come back to the the raft. Uh, in the raft, what happened? So we had reached this situation where this is the compound wall. This is your excavation line. I had come. I had dug the excavation up till over here, and this excavation was there. So by that logic, my first layer is I'll compact this layer. Okay, I'll either lay a plastic completely so that there is no cement leaching inside, or I'll level it out and I'll put a aggregate layer or a stone pitching. Right? That's number one. Then what happens? Then I'll put these, as somebody said, I'll mark the column alignments. So I'll say these are my column alignments. Okay, I'll mark these column alignments. Okay. So in the column alignments, I will notice that in this area, I have to take an eccentric footing. Okay. So this footing is going to go eccentric. Now, depending on whether I have already arrived at a hard strata over here, or I need to go deeper, I might have piles, I might not have piles, or we figure that out. Yeah. So this is the level that I have achieved, right? Similarly, over here also, this fellow also is coming over here. There is this column over here. Okay. And these are connected through the plinth beams over here. Now, this pile cap or the pad footing. So even if I don't assume a pile cap, I assume that this layer is of the hard strata. Okay, if this layer is of the hard strata, okay, or bearing strata, right? So beyond that, I don't need to go. Okay, but once if I have, even if I don't have to go, I still need to have a pad footing, correct? So these are the pad footings. So once I design these pad footings, then in between there is going to be a upheave, there is going to be stresses. Okay, so I need to figure out what am I going to do to that. So in all probabilities, I'll need a raft which is continuous. Correct? Yeah, and the raft will have plinth beams over here. So I'll draw this over here. This. So this is my raft, and there are beams which are connecting one pile cap to the other, and there is a inverted pocket which is created over here, right? Now this inverted pocket, obviously I cannot walk into in this kind of a space, so we'll fill this up, and then we'll have a PCC or whatever the finish level over here. Now what do I fill this up with? What do I fill this up with? And I mean, one thing is definitely the levelizing of it. Is there any other function to this film?
Vikram, we can't hear you.
Hello? Nobody could hear me?
No, your voice was really far away.
Oh, sorry. So, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I was asking that your main profile is this. Yeah. Okay. This is your main profile. Okay. But since there are and in between you will have these you know, plinth beams connecting one pile pad footing to the other or pile cap to another. Okay. So when you have that, there are these pockets which are formed, right? So obviously you cannot negotiate your basement with these kind of pockets, up down up down up down. So you'll want a level surface, right? You'll want a level surface. So to achieve that level surface, you will fill this up, correct? So what would you prefer to fill it up with? And what are the considerations of deciding what material you want to fill it up with? And what are the design considerations that you need to bear in mind when you are filling it up? This is a raft foundation which was done last year, no? So there was a basement raft or raft foundation which was covered last year.
No, we didn't cover basement last.
Sorry,
No, we didn't cover it.
you haven't covered it. But raft foundation was covered or not?
Not really. It's very, very basic.
Okay. So, but then you are able to follow what I'm asking, or you are should I go back to? I mean, should I? Can I expect you to follow what I'm asking? The one in red is your profile of the pile, your pad foundation footing, your footing or pile cap, and the raft, correct?
Yes, yes.
And there is a blue pocket filled up, which will be pockets between the connector beam connectors, and the pocket will be filled up so that the you get a level surface, correct? So you can walk, you can drive, whatever, because you need a level surface in the basement. You cannot have up and down, everybody going up and down, right? Correct. So my
Yeah.
question is, what do you fill this up with, and do you think it is a means? What is your opinion? If I fill it up with concrete, you will say कि, okay, इतना concrete waste किया वगैरह. If I fill it with earth, there will be some issues. If I fill it up with brickbat, there is some questions. So how do you come to a conclusion? Okay, ये material चलेगा, ये नहीं चलेगा. And before you fill it up, what are the things that you need to bear in mind? What needs to be completed before you start filling this up? समझा ना question?
Yes, yes.
तो मतलब you can, this is a discussion, so you can ideate, you can give your opinion, and then we can take it up from there.
Maybe finish the waterproofing before adding anything.
Perfect. But before getting into that, let's finish this question, and then we'll come to the question of waterproofing. It's a first question, waterproofing, but let's understand this structurally first, and then we'll go to the construct of it. So these are the main components of your basement, right? Basement, this raft. So in the components of the basement, what are the materials that go into the making of a basement raft? The predominant bulk material. And then we'll order the sequence of those, organizing those materials.
Murram or soil?
Okay, somebody is saying this can be murum or soil. Okay, any opinion on this? Can we fill in murum or soil in this area, in this pocket?
Yeah, I think it can
It'll
still.
probably have to be some lightweight material, won't it?
Sorry?
It will probably have to be something lightweight, right?
Somebody is saying that it has to be lightweight. Okay. Do everybody agree with these 2 points, or?
I think it can be Murrum, maybe.
Achha, you also think that it can be murum. Okay. Any counterpoints?
I think it should be rubble soling since the slab is going to come on top of it, right?
So there is rubble soling. I am not very sure because the structurally it is already taken care of over here. There is no structural requirement as such because you're already having a raft. So rubble soling of dimension, it's structurally not required. Okay. So anyway, let's come to this. So what are the pressures on a basement? You have studied there is a upthrust pressure, right? There is a reactive pressure, correct? Because of this reactive pressure, there is going to be a bulge and all that. Okay. So when you have, see, if it was a regular slab, you always think about gravity and you think about downward thrust. In a basement, you always need to think about the reactive forces. Every action has equal and opposite reaction. So at the basement, that entire load of the building is going to be reacted to by the soil, by the ground. Okay. So there is going to be an upward thrust. Okay. Now this upward thrust needs to be countered. To counter this, you have the reinforcement in your regular slab reinforcement. You always were taught that the main reinforcement goes in the bottom, in the middle is this, and the shear reinforcement is additional extra on the sides where the supports are. In the raft, this was when the load was coming from the top. But same thing, if the load is coming from the bottom, what are you going to do? You are going to reverse. But this is not just about a reversal of this. There is a top load as well as there is a bottom load. So you have to design cage. So you have to have double reinforcement on top as well as bottom, both for the bending stresses. Okay. So your rafts are designed in a way which takes care of both. But invariably, you are going to have additional reinforcement on the top because their hogging moment is much more. Okay, that is one. That is as far as this slab is concerned. This anyway is a the pile cap cage or a raft ka grill or a raft ka cage. Okay, on top of that, this is the material which is doing two acts. One is it is filling so that the top can be leveled. Second is it is adding dead load, which is important to serve as a ballast. Now, again, I'm repeating. these forces, which are reactive forces, they are going to have a tendency to push the building upwards. So there is going to be a buoyancy force. Okay. So imagine a ship or a boat. Okay. Though when the water pushes it up, it it if the ship is lighter, then it will sway. It will sway more. So in a ship design, you always have the hull which is heavy. So your bottom is heavy, so it gives stability to the building. So this raft and the foundation is also important, or it is important to create a ballast or a heavy kind of a base to maintain the stability of the building. Okay, you have to imagine the basement. If you can imagine a scenario where I try to push a empty mug, okay, into a bucket of water, what is going to happen? That mug is going to be thrown up. Okay, when you are designing basement, you have to treat the soil as fluid, and you have to treat the basement as that empty container. And then imagine what are the forces that empty container is going to have, and whether the weight of the basement or the structural system that you are doing is good enough to anchor it firmly on the ground. Okay, is this understood? Is this strategy clear for the basement primarily? Are there any questions on this?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, anyone else who has some doubts? It's very important to understand this distinction between a regular slab or normal footing which is above the ground and the basement. This is the fundamental thing, and then we can talk about the finishes and all that, waterproofing and all that. But structurally, it is very important to understand what is the nature, what are the forces which are acting upon a basement. And for that, the simplest kind of visualization is to imagine a ship or a boat or an empty container trying to be pushed into a bucket of water or ocean or a sea. Okay, and then try to visualize what are the forces coming. Okay, so if everybody has understood that, then we'll go ahead. Okay, so the now next point is coming to the, so one, we know that we cannot have a lightweight kind of a thing. Okay, it will have to have a certain density, certain mass to act as a ballast. It has to have a certain dead weight. So I cannot put Aerocon blocks or something like that if I need a more heavier substance, right? Rubble soling becomes unnecessary, it becomes expensive. Okay. Uh, there is and rubble soling again will damage the slab also. When they are being thrown, the concrete will chip, there will be too much, and also it will form pockets. Okay, it is also difficult when you put the rubble soling, it is difficult to channel. So unless you work out everything, your rubble soling is working out cheaper, then by all means you go for rubble soling. But otherwise you hold on, you don't go for rubble soling. Okay, murum is a soil, it is a clay. Okay, the problem with using these murum has to be compacted and it has to be allowed. So there will be a lot of dimensional variation in the murum. Okay, also it will hold a lot of water, which will not allow this top layer to dry out very quickly. So the decision of murum also should be subject to what is the quality of murum, what is the sandy quality, what is the clay content, whether it is good enough, whether it will remain, whether it will be dimensionally stable. Because if there is dimensionally unstable component, the top is only a PCC. So if this shrinks or settles down, there are going to be cracks over here. Okay, so that's the reason most of the time murum is not used unless it is as part of the filler for rubble or something, or the structural engineer already figured out what is the composition of murum, and then they have allowed to use murum. So by and large, what are you left with? So mostly this becomes again another mix of concrete. Okay, the only difference is this is a design mix. So design concrete, so I'll go for M25 or M20, and this is going to be lean concrete. Okay, now why concrete? Because as I told you, if there are these if there are these drainage channels, or laying of pipes and all that, once I do this pocket shuttering and all, I just have to pour the concrete, so it settles on and it hardens up. Okay, but nevertheless it is concrete. Of course, I don't need any structural kind of a strength of the concrete, because that structural is taken care of by the pile, the footings of the columns and this, as well as the raft. I just needed lean concrete to level the surface and to give an additional weight to act as a ballast. Okay, so it gets executed in also in two steps. One is the design concrete mix will be done, and then there will be the lean concrete. Now you will find, so this was a practice which was 10-15 years ago. Increasingly, we are finding that this shuttering is becoming the labor intensive, cost wise, and all that. So all these offsets and all, people, the developers and people who are interested in fast construction, they are not getting into all that. So they try to arrive. So by and large, we try to arrive at the right design of the concrete. So if my single pour concrete, the cost of concrete, if I'm getting M25 concrete and M15 concrete, में ज़्यादा difference नहीं है, because earlier the cost was largely because of the cement price, but now the aggregate and sand has also become very expensive. Okay, so the if the cost difference is not too high and the shuttering cost is working out to be more than that, I might as well put M25 concrete as single pour concrete and use this and convert that design into, instead of a beam and slab construction, I convert it as a raft slab construction, a solid raft construction. Yeah, are we clear on this? So you have number of options to design your basement, and there are parameters that you need to think about as to what is the right combination to arrive at the correct decision. Is that fair enough? Should we move ahead?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Now, then, so this is the fundamental of any basement. Okay. Now let's talk about the waterproofing. Okay. Your waterproofing is, what is the ideal position of the waterproofing? What is the ideal location of the waterproofing? Inside, like this. Should I do the waterproofing like this? Easier, no?
I think it should be from the outside so that the water can't go in the foundation.
Water can't go in the foundation. Why don't you want the water to go in the foundation?
It will make cracks in the base.
No, pad footings are always in water. They never get cracked. See, this is easier to construct, right? एक बार बना दिया waterproofing अंदर से लगा, it's also is cheaper because the surface area of the inside area is much lesser than the surface area of the outside. And yet you are right, waterproofing is done from the outside. So what is the reason? Anyone? No?
Constant exposure to the water and the moisture in the soil could be bad for the structural integrity and the strength.
That's what somebody else said in a different way, but your pad footings are under constant exposure to moisture and this groundwater. Na? You don't think of waterproofing that. Some amount of tarring and all is done in coastal areas, but by and large, the pad footings are also subjected to the same problem.
Maybe it's done on the outside so that it kind of blocks the water seepage towards the inside. Like so
But
that it
I can block the water seepage by putting the waterproofing on the inside. No? Why is this inside what I've drawn not a right thing to do? In spite of it being cheaper, easier to construct, faster, less expensive, probably cleaner. एक ही स्ट्रोक में मेरा टाइलिंग भी हो जाता है, फिनिशेस हो जाता है एकदम चकाचक. There is no plastering required and all. In a single stroke, I do my waterproofing as well as the finishing. But still, this is not technically right. Why? What is the problem in doing this? No one?
Maybe because the pad footing doesn't really have the used spaces as close to the water that could come near it as the basement does.
No, so for use space के लिए तो that's why we did the waterproofing from inside, no? In this example. So structurally जो बाहर wet होता है wet होने दो, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? मेरा inside space तो dry है ना, because I've done the waterproofing.
What if there is a leakage or something from inside?
Leakage from inside मतलब?
मतलब ऊपर से पानी, and if there are services pipes going on, if there is a leakage, so it will make all the part wet.
But that problem will exist even if I do from outside, no? That is independent of whether I do this waterproofing from inside or outside. Pass to pass, then we can move ahead. Somebody say pass, then I'll move ahead. You still want to try? Somebody wants to try, attempt it? Or you're saying pass, then I'll...
Pass.
Okay, one more pass, please, from somebody else. Okay. So the problem is, it is not the structure itself, because the structure is, you have poured concrete and all. The problem is the joints. So there are constructional joints between when you are laying this out. Okay, and through those constructional joints there are vulnerabilities. So water will come in and it will start accumulating over here. Once it starts accumulating over here, there is either a vapor pressure or there is a hydropneumatic pressure which is being built up between the wall and the waterproofing if it is on the inner side. Okay, and because the pressure is being built from the other side, there will be no other option but the bulging of these waterproofing, and it will start failing. So this inside waterproofing will never survive. Okay, in terms of these vulnerabilities of the waterproofing. Okay, so as against that, if I put the the waterproofing from outside, as against that, if I put the waterproofing from outside, the pressure is again from the outside only. There is no pressure from inside, correct? So this pressure is not going to create a rift between the waterproofing and the RCC wall. Okay. Then of course it protects the wall, it protects the moisture, and it protects the structural integrity. That answer is also right, but that is not the main reason for this. Okay, because if that was the reason, then I would have changed the just steel to epoxy coated steel or stainless steel, and because bridges and this are built. But nevertheless, I still need waterproofing. Okay, so this is the reason why you have waterproofing from the outside. Okay, now last time we studied what were the kinds of waterproofing, right? Yeah, what were the kinds of waterproofing? Did we study that? No. So what are the kinds of waterproofing?
Chemical waterproofing,
Okay.
tiling. We saw in the last present. They had those quota stones placed. And
Just a second. So types of waterproofing may you have. Okay, types of waterproofing may you have. Number one is box type waterproofing. Okay, then you have membrane waterproofing. You're able to see this, right? Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Then there are these crystalline waterproofing. Okay. Largely nowadays there is a competition between which the decisions are largely between these broad categories. Now, what is box type waterproofing? It is the oldest type of waterproofing which use the stone, either Shabad or Kadapa or Kota or Tandur, but largely Kota has proven to be the most robust. Okay, so you have box type waterproofing. Then you have membrane waterproofing, which uses a flexible membrane, okay, which is like almost like a rubber sheet. The membrane waterproofing now are also applicable as paint applications. Okay, so earlier it used to be sheets of either rubber sheets or plastic sheets or any kind of membrane which was applied, but these sheets are paint application. Nowadays these rubberized solutions are available. You give a coat of paint and it becomes a thick layer of waterproofing as well, right? Either way. So box type, membrane, and chemical waterproofing. One of the chemical waterproofing is crystalline waterproofing. Yeah. There are multiple products which are available in the chemical waterproofing side. Box type is related with stone. These are sheets or paints, and chemicals is something we'll talk about later. Okay. Now, stone waterproofing is, as we said, that it will be Kota or Shabad or anything like that. These sheets were the first, one of the first. This was you have heard of DuPont, right? DuPont had a Hyalem membrane. Okay, so DuPont Hyalem membrane, if you type, you'll get those. So they came up with sheets which were they continuous sheets, and they could be welded together. Okay, so they could be overlapped and they could be welded together, so that the joints. Main problem of membrane waterproofing is the joints. So that's the reason why the paint applications became more popular later on, where the joint application. But paint applications are not robust. Okay, they have this vulnerability because they are dependent on the workbench on the side, the mixtures. There is a lot of variables. So ideally, you should look at the stone waterproofing or this membrane waterproofing, which is sheets with a welded, or there are these glues which gives the joints, the overlap joints are also so rigid that they don't come off, they don't break easily. Okay, so that is the membrane waterproofing. Chemical crystalline waterproofing has not been, it has been tried out, as I told you last time also. We had in SIS we had used this crystalline waterproofing only. The advantage of crystalline waterproofing and why it is very attractive is because you don't have to worry about a separate layer. The whole slab itself, I add a compound into it and make the concrete itself as waterproof concrete. Okay, that is the whole point of crystalline waterproofing. Okay, so there is the porosity between the concrete is made to zero. There is no water allowed to come through the concrete. Okay, how does it work? There are this in chemical, in crystalline waterproofing, there are these crystals which will go and plug all the junctions where the water is coming from. Okay, but to reach to that spot, it again needs water as a carrier. Okay, so there are other products also. There are crystalline waterproofing, there are amorphous. So there are products which, when they come in contact with water, they swell by 200 times, 300 times, and they go and settle into an area, and they swell and they expand and they plug the leakages. But many a times these products are used for leakages, plugging the leakages of water tanks, emergency usages. Your slab, if it is leaking, your bathroom slab, it is leaking because no fault of yours, somebody else's fault. So for your reverse injections and all, these products work very well. Okay, so for all your repairs and repairs, and after the the completion of the work, these products work very well. But when it is the first time construction, I think the first two typologies, box type and membrane, and we in the conventional format, box type is something which even your contractors will be very comfortable, happy with. Okay, unless you are getting these the trained manpower for membrane waterproofing, who know their job very well, and they'll do a thorough job of it. The most common practice is the box type waterproofing. Okay, now what is box type waterproofing? Okay, you have seen this image, right? No, not this. This one. Now you see this wall. There are these tiles which are being constructed, the layered. Okay, and if you see the right side image, there is this waterproofing layer which is done over here, and on the inside again there is a RCC wall. So after this also there is, I am assuming that there will be an RCC wall even on the inside, so that this waterproofing remains outside the habitable or usable space. Correct. Now this waterproofing is called the box type waterproofing. Okay, so there are various ways. Some people give only uh, one layer of Kota stone. Some people go for two layers of Kota. So it depending on what is the what is the stress on it and what is the requirement and all. You might you might want to consider one or more layers of Kota. Now in this picture, the picture I showed you, you see only one layer of Kota, right? Sorry. In this layer you see one layer of Kota. Even in this you are seeing one layer of Kota. Over here also you are seeing one layer of Kota. Correct. Now wherever you have RCC, because RCC itself is a robust kind of construct, and you can have a crystalline waterproofing within that. So once you have a crystalline waterproofing in the RCC or a grade mentioned M25 grade which is dense enough, then you just need an additional support layer so that the RCC gets an additional layer of waterproofing. So one layer gets good enough. But many a times there is a concern that these joints between the tiles, they will fail. Okay, so if that concern is there and that is a real concern, then another strategy is to have another layer. So if I have let me draw over here. If I have tiles which are like this, my second layer is going to be staggered. Okay, so by this way, these junctions are completely sealed off. Okay, so of course, contractor, the demand of the waterproofing. So this becomes important when you are doing something in a very high water table area, or you are doing a laboratory under tremendous water. So wherever there is the requirement demand like that, you change the nature of box type waterproofing. You add another layer. Okay. These tile sizes again are about 22 inches. They say 600 2 feet by 2 feet. Like side cuts वगैरह करके you get hardly about 22 inches. Okay. Anyway, those are minor details that you can see it later. Okay. So that is as far as box type waterproofing is concerned. The second is about the membrane waterproofing. So instead of this box type waterproofing, you are applying a membrane. Now this is your this is your wall. Okay, and you are doing a membrane waterproofing on the outside. Okay, so when you do a membrane waterproofing, if you are doing a membrane waterproofing, can you leave this just like that? The membrane just exposed the way you left the Kota stone. Can you leave this as it is? Did you understand my question? If you are putting a membrane, just imagine a rubber sheet on the outer side of this waterproofing. What is the problem with that? I think I got disconnected or what?
No, we can hear.
No, you are very much audible, Vikram.
Yeah. So this is my this is my structural, this wall. This is, and I put the waterproofing on the outside. So instead of box type waterproofing, I want to use membrane waterproofing. So what is the challenge that you can imagine in the membrane waterproofing?
You can't go beneath the slab, right? The raft.
Sorry?
Like you'll only be able to lay it at so till the point where you reach. Like you can't go beneath the slab or anything.
But it is important for me to have a continuous waterproofing. I have to have waterproofing even beneath the slab. That is not the point. I'm asking you in terms of material itself. Visualize the material of stone and visualize the material of a rubber sheet.
It could be quite easy for it to get torn or punctured, right? From like sharp
Exactly.
stones or rodents or things.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay. So when you use membrane waterproofing, it is important to have the membrane waterproofing, and the membrane waterproofing is not just a rubber sheet. It will have these net and all that, and you'll need to plaster it from the outside. Okay. So it is important to have the membrane waterproofing with some kind of a mechanical work. So invariably, it is not just the plaster. Invariably, we try to build a masonry outside the membrane waterproofing, which prevents the membrane from getting mechanically damaged. Okay. So membrane waterproofing will always have a masonry on the outside. Is that clear? Followed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's come to your question about कि ये नीचे कैसे जा सकता है. Okay. So for that you need to start with the sequence of operation. When you start the sequence of operation itself, my first layer is going to be a PCC, or I'm going to level the surface. I'm going to put a plastic sheet. Okay. This plastic sheet either itself is it is welded, and it serves as a waterproofing layer. Okay. Or on top of the plastic sheet, I'm going to put my waterproofing layer. Okay. Or instead of plastic sheet, I'll put a PCC. I'll level this up all with PCC, and so that I get a level surface. I'll put the box type waterproofing. If it is a box type waterproofing will need a PCC beneath it so that it is level. I'll lay the box type waterproofing. There will be a masonry constructed over here, okay, which will give me the support. So I'll have my box type waterproofing turning up over here. This masonry will also form the permanent shuttering for my concrete pour over here. So once the box type waterproofing or the membrane waterproofing is completed up till over here, say this point, okay, then I'll do the reinforcement. Sorry, I'll do the reinforcement. Okay, and then I'll pour the concrete within this, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there will be dowels which will be left over here for tying up the wall reinforcement. Now, before the dowels take place, I have already poured the concrete. I have done the waterproofing. The waterproofing has come up till this level, up till over here. Now again, once this concrete is poured, I'll finish this layer. I'll add a masonry, or if it is a box waterproofing, I don't need a masonry. My masonry will wait for the wall to come up. Okay, and then I'll put the dowels, I'll put the reinforcement, construct the wall, and put the waterproofing from outside. So till the time this wall gets constructed, this outside wall remains open and the waterproofing gets done on the outside. If I don't have the space, I'll construct the wall from the inside, which is what we are seeing in the photograph. I'll construct the wall. On the inner side, I'll do the waterproofing, whether it is box type waterproofing, membrane waterproofing, whatever waterproofing I'm doing. And then I'll construct the internal RCC wall. Okay, so there are, depending on the site conditions, you organize your sequence of operation, but you need to make sure that you understand what are the minimum dimensions which you require if you want to do the waterproofing from outside, or if you can't do, if you don't get this minimum dimensions, then how do you go about doing that? Is this clear? Shall we move ahead? Hello.
Yes, yes.
Shall we move ahead? Are we clear on why in that particular? So my question to you was, in this photograph you are seeing that the waterproofing is done from the outside, correct? Right? But in this photograph you are seeing that the waterproofing is being done from the inside. I want you to spare a couple of minutes to just mull over what I said just now, and what is the reason behind these two different approaches, and what do you need to do when you're doing the waterproofing from inside. Are we clear on this? There are still, if anybody has doubt, I would like, means I don't mind repeating myself, but let's get this concept very clear.
We can go ahead.
Okay, done. So then let's come to waterproofing is taken care of. Now we'll discuss the reinforcement and the structure. Okay, so raft slab के लिए, what is the structure that was raft slab cover किया ना, solid raft last year? Reinforcement के बारे में कुछ बात हुआ?
Yeah, like we did the basics of it.
Okay, so what was the reinforcement like? I mean, what was the thickness of the slab that you considered, and approximately? Say I'm doing a slab of 3 meters by 3 meters. A regular slab on your regular floor. What is the thickness of the slab? Span by 30. So say about 100, 110 mm. Correct? In a basement, the same grid follows, right? 3 meters by 3 meters. What is the thickness of the raft slab in the same span? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be more?
It will be more, but how
How
much?
much more? How much more? 150? Chalega? Ki 200? Ki 250? Ki 300? Okay, how do you decide between this? ये तो ये तो आप लोगों को ये स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड है, 150 तो चलेगा नहीं. क्यों नहीं चलेगा?
It's pretty less, and usually that's even the size of depth of the slab we use.
The
That cannot be depth.
depth of the slab is usually 120. Don't see that is what we tend to because we do scale drawings, we tend to not realize what is the difference between a 120 slab and 50 It's a good 30 difference. When you calculate the amount of cement, sand, concrete, cement, sand, and gravel which goes into that in that 30 you'll realize how much dead load as well as the cost. This just the difference between 120 and 150 matter. Okay, so let's start in talking in terms of at least 10 accuracy. Okay, so 100 से सीधे 150 पे जंप मत किया करो. Okay, so your slabs should never be designed as 150. They should be designed as 150 only if your spans are 4.5 meters. If your spans are lesser than 3.6 meters, then this 120 is good enough for you. In most instances, 110 is also good enough. Okay. Now, 150, why we show it as a common this is because it also takes into consideration the plaster and the many instances in architectural drawing we consider 150 because the finished floor 100 slab and 50 finished floor करके 150 करके वो खत्म कर देते हैं. But in construct you have to be particular about 10 12 also you have to be very specific. Okay, so coming back to this question, why do you think that it should be more and how much more? Again, I have not gone into deep foundations. I'm not talking about high rises. I'm talking about a conventional ground plus 1-story house which has a basement at 6 feet. It has a cellar kind of at 6 feet, and you're constructing a cellar for that house. So what is the thickness of this raft that you will need?
500 maybe.
500.
Yeah, because in my
Your pad
plan,
footing is separate. Sorry, your pad footing is separate. So let's talk about your pad footing as being this. Okay, so if your column is over here, is your column, the pad footing is separate. So let's not talk about the pad footing. So your column stresses are being taken care of by this pad footing.
It's between 150 and 300 now. It needs to have double reinforcement. So
अगर मैं 450 लिख दिया होता तो you would have said 150 and 450. If I had written 600, you would have said 150 and 600. ऐसा थोड़ी ना होता. So, though the reactive forces are of the column, the main forces are of the column is going to in this diagram, you notice if there is a column over here, this is going to push the surroundings, right? There is going to be this kind of an action, correct? Now this action, this heave is going to put the stress on the slab adjacent to it. Okay, so your normal slab was taking the dead load, it was taking its own load. But when it goes into the foundation, the entire building, मतलब अगर if it is a 3-story building, almost my 3 stories का जो reactive stress है, that is going to come onto the slab beneath. So the structural engineer, of course, will do the calculation as to what is the heave you need to consider, what is the hydropneumatic pressure. But by and large, 300 mm and more. So these slabs are never lesser than 300 mm. Okay, so 300 mm and more for a basement. And if it is a ground raft, it is just the plinth raft, then probably you might have say about 200 or 250 or something, because there is no reactive force working upon that. But if it is a solid raft, invariably the basement as well as solid raft, invariably we are talking about dimensions of 300 plus. Okay, many of the solid rafts go to 3 meters also, particularly in the skyscrapers that you're working upon. You will come across solid rafts which are 3 meters, 3.5 meters, 4 meters, and those magnitudes also. Okay, but uh, for now, let's look at a 300 mm slab. Okay, what does 300 mm allow you to do? It allows you to have the top reinforcement as well as the bottom reinforcement. Yeah, and in between you will have the chairs. So the chairs are the spacers. Either it is kept at every 1 meter in both the direction, or 1.2 meter in the both directions. So the job is to not allow this the reinforcement to sag. Okay, so these chairs at Z shape, basically they are chairs which are a single reinforcement is drawn like this, folded like this, and it is drawn like this. Got it? Okay, so this is placed at every 1 meter in both directions, or 2 meters in both directions, to keep the top reinforcement in place. Bottom reinforcement, of course, will have cover. Okay, at every whatever is the specified dimension. So these reinforcements will be either 16 mm, 12 mm, or 20 mm, depending on the design of the reinforcement. And then you start, once these chairs are in place, you start pouring the concrete. Yeah, are we clear on this? Now let's come to the reinforcement of the wall itself. Okay, now these are cantilever portion. They are vertical cantilevers. There is going to be a lot of stress. So this area is going to have tremendous amount of stress. Okay, so the reinforcement cannot be a single reinforcement in the middle. Okay, these reinforcements are, even if it is a 150 thick wall with column piers coming in the middle, this will have reinforcement on both the faces, and they will be staggered reinforcement. So this reinforcement will go inside, and it will be anchored to have a lap joint over here. This reinforcement will go, and it's supposed to anchor over here, but there is no space. So it will loop around over here, and it will come back over here. So I'll draw it in another color over here. So this reinforcement will come like, sorry, this reinforcement will come like this, and it will go and sit on this, the bottom main reinforcement. Whereas this reinforcement will go like this. If there is enough kind of a toe, it will go like this, but otherwise it will go and turn over here. So it will be poured like this. Okay, so this gives you enough anchorage to the two reinforcements, right? And of course there will be the distribution steel, which will go on both the sides, correct? And then there will be shuttering and the concrete will be poured and all that stuff, right? Clear? Any doubts about the reinforcement bit of it?
No,
Hello?
no.
So now once the reinforcement is tied, you know the design of the reinforcement, you have poured the concrete. So pouring the concrete up till over here is also not a problem, correct? So pouring the concrete up till over here is also not a problem. Now construction of the wall itself, okay, what do you envisage? Can I pour the concrete in a single kind of a cast or no? What is the problem? Say this is 1.6 meters or your now top layer तक ऊपर तक जाना है बराबर. So this will be say 2.7 meters or 3 meters the top slab or 3.6 meters say. Okay, because ये 600 तुम्हारा इसमें फिलिंग में जाने वाला है, correct? So 3.6 में से 0.6 गया, I'm left with only 3 meters. Okay, now I have to cast this wall which is 3.6 meters high. Okay, can I do it in one single shot?
No, we cannot.
Why not?
Because maybe that gap, the height increases, so there might be some gaps which will be left, or like we can fill a bit and then um use the vibrators and all to settle the.
Okay, तो बट वाइब्रेटर अगर सेटल कर रहा है तो फिर प्रॉब्लम क्या है? 3 मीटर्स करने में क्या प्रॉब्लम है?
I just thought the distance is more.
Sorry?
I just thought the distance is more, like 3 meters will be a lot to fill.
चलो 3 मीटर्स नहीं 2.4 मीटर्स चलेगा मिनिमम, क्योंकि उसके ऊपर तो मेरा वैसे भी बीम आने वाला है, ऊपर वाला बीम आएगा ना, तो इधर बीम के बॉटम तक तो मैं कास्ट कर सकता हूँ ना.
Maybe it is also the fact that it's not only about the height but of the width. Like you have to cover an entire area at once, and that might induce some irregularities. Because we also
Sorry, I didn't
like
get it.
cast. Yeah, so I was saying is maybe it's not only about the height but also about the width, like the length of the RCC. Sorry, the wall.
Length is one, but let's assume that I am doing at every my column space placement is every 4.5 meters on the periphery, so I'm casting between the two columns. Okay, so column and column का cast इसका cast मेरे को साथ में लेना है. Okay, so can I put it all the way to 2.4 meters or not? Is what I have to worry about. समझा ना?
Yes, yes.
So क्या करें? सोचो तब तक मैं ये वापस मतलब क्लीनर ड्राइंग बना देता हूँ. No one? बोलो भाई. Should I repeat? This is a box type waterproofing. The reinforcement we have discussed already. Now we are talking about casting of the concrete. So this concrete up till over here is already cast. I have some dowels which are coming over here for my this reinforcement. So this reinforcement has gone like this. This reinforcement has gone like this. Okay. Now the question is, this height is say 2.4, above which I'm going to have this beam, but that is cast separately. So in this casting, I have to imagine whether I'm going to do it full one single cast, or I'm going to need multiple cast.
You will require multiple casts.
Why?
Like not so sure, but like we use that water bar thing while casting the retaining wall. So it
Perfect.
has
So what is the purpose of that water bar? Why do you need that water bar? And do you
uh,
need that water bar in, say, for example, my wind shuttering also?
so basically the water bar is for like different cast of concrete. So it's like waterproofing kind of a layer, and it's used to
I
seal that.
know, but why do you create a problem in the first place? वो वाटर बार अगर बनाते ही नहीं थे, अगर सिंगल कास्ट में हो जाता तो वो वाटर बार की जरूरत ही नहीं थी ना.
Yeah, that's why I'm not so sure, but
So which is nice. You have got the right point, but let's think about that point in a different way. Na? If you want to solve that, by what is the problem in the conventional shuttering? I have also given the clue. In conventional shuttering, what is the problem? Why do we need to have that bar? And the same problem is also for deep beams. Huh? It is not just the subterranean. This discussion that I'm having right now with you is not restricted to basement retaining wall alone. It is for all the vertical surfaces of either Pardi walls or exposed concrete walls or shear walls or your deep beams. So all of those are they have this.
It may be like an expansion joint.
नहीं रे बाबा, एक्सपांशन जॉइंट रहता तो फिर वो वाटर बार करके मैं वापस फ्यूज क्यों करूंगा? रीइंफोर्समेंट तो कंटिन्यूअस जाता है ना. और एक्सपांशन जॉइंट ये हॉरिजॉन्टल में क्यों डालूंगा मैं? मतलब सेक्शन में क्यों डालूंगा एक्सपांशन जॉइंट? सोचो सोचो जरा सोचो. It's to do, मैंने उधर लिखा भी है, it has to do with the shuttering. What about the shuttering?
वो उतना पूरा बड़ा शटरिंग नहीं बनता रहेगा.
क्यों? शटरिंग का तो 2.4 मीटर का साइज मिलता है ना. 2.4 बाय 1.2 मीटर का तो प्लाई मिलता है ना. Pass. Somebody still wants to try or pass?
Yeah, like even I feel it's due to the shuttering pressure, like pressure on the shuttering, limits of the shuttering formwork,
What on the shuttering?
like limits of the shuttering and formwork.
हाँ, but dimensional limit is 2.4 मीटर. That's why I said कि ये अगर 2.4 लेता हूँ, इसके ऊपर का तो बीम वैसे भी अलग है, तो 2.4 अगर मैं लेता हूँ तो वो हो जाएगा क्या? It has to do with something related with the shuttering as well as the concrete itself.
वो बीच में से खुल जाता रहेगा, कंक्रीट ऊपर से भर रहे तो.
Correct. So basically your conventional shuttering which is 12 mm ply, okay, because उससे ज़्यादा ply, उससे ज़्यादा thick shuttering बनाने जाएंगे तो उसका वो contractor का दिवाला निकल जाएगा, बराबर? So 12 mm ply, though it is ribbed and all that from the outside, when the concrete gets poured, the concrete is fluid but it has a certain weight. So that weight that this shuttering is not able to sustain. So you will have a tendency that this shuttering will bulge. Okay, and there are जो alignment वगैरह रहता है वो सब it goes for a toss. Okay, so for that reason the concrete needs to set before you start pouring the next layer. Okay, only when it is set it is able to take the load which is coming on top of it, and it will not put the stress on the shuttering. Okay, so if you want to reduce the cost of the shuttering and you want to contain, then you have to operate within this 1.2 meters. Okay, so usually 1.2 meters भी नहीं, 0.9 तक ही restrict करते हैं. So the filling is 0.9 or 1 or maximum 1.2 meters तक ये height रहता है, बराबर? So this is the construction joint which automatically gets, not expansion joint. See, there are three kinds of joints. Okay, one is construction joint, one is expansion joint, and there is seismic joint. Please do not use interchangeably, or be very specific about what kind of joint are you talking about. अभी either construction joint अगर बोलते थे I would have accepted. Somebody said expansion joint, that's why I got a little this. Okay, expansion joint is where the building needs to expand. It is a long building, it needs to expand, it needs to make a provision for it. Seismic joint is where there is vibration, there is a possibility of the building vibrating and it should not pound on the other building, and that's why you have a seismic joint. Construction joint in slabs, in walls, is where construction in the single flow is not possible. You have to take a pause, you have to take a break, and then the new concrete which is being added. So these construction joints are also carefully designed. Okay, so this is a construction joint, correct? So at this construction joint I'm going to have the water barrier. Okay, so if this is a wall and this is the construction joint at this junction, what I'm going to have is a rubberized kind of butyl rubber kind of a continuous membrane, which actually it is it has ribs like this, and it is it is a continuous strip. Okay, so this one component of it is embedded on the lower side and the concrete is poured. Okay, so and the half of it is sticking out. Okay, so when the new construction concrete is poured, it forms this joint is vulnerable. Okay, because it's a construction joint, it's vulnerable. It will have a tendency to allow the water to go in. So this water bar, this is a water bar, prevents the water from coming in through the construction joints. Yeah, clear? But in my one construction, it is aluminum shutterings, And the aluminum, they are stiffer. They have ribs. I'll show you a Maivan construction. Uh, okay, this is a Maivan construction. Okay, now if you look at this, the shuttering is up till over here. I'm not able to edit this. Sorry. Let me take this slide over here. So you have yeah. So look at this. So this in this shuttering, if you notice, the shuttering is all the way up till over here. This is the first leg, okay, and then there are these. But look at the shuttering over here. This is all aluminium, okay. I'll show you some more images also. This is all aluminium. These, and then you have these, the ties between the inside and the outside also, so that there is no bulge. There is this horizontal ribs also, so there is no deflection because of the concrete. So the entire structure of the shuttering itself is designed to handle the stress of the concrete, or the fluid kind of flow of the concrete. It's stiffened, and then you can avoid this construction joints in the horizontal direction. Yeah. So what was I showing you? Yeah, this was okay. Yeah. So coming back to our topic. Yeah. So coming to, if you are using conventional plywood shuttering, you don't have a choice but to go for these construction joints with water bars. Okay. Conventional joints with water bars, and just a second, the battery is draining. I'll just connect it to power. Meanwhile, if you can just if there is any kind of a question or query, doubt so far, I hope the topic is fairly understood, clear, because once you understand the waterproofing, then deep foundations becomes, the design of deep foundations become easier. You need to understand the construction and the waterproofing part of it. Is this, by this lecture, are you able to get some idea about what goes into making of a basement foundations, or still gray area? So yeah, back. So has been a long session. So anyone with any kind of concerns so far related to this construction of the waterproofing part of the basement and the walls and slabs of the basement, raft of the basement? I'll stop presenting now. I think we'll. It has been a long session. Just take some feedback, and next time I think we'll cover pile and other construction of pile and diaphragm walls and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So any questions so far, or this was useful? It was too long. What was the reaction on this lecture, if any?
Yeah, it was useful.
मोहित तू अकेला क्यों बोल रहा है? कोई और भी बोल सकता है ना कि
Yeah,
I'm glad
it's
you are
useful.
speaking. At least you are speaking. But yeah, it would be good to hear other voices as well. Is there anything that you based on your high-rise
We
Vikram,
can't hear you.
Hello?
yeah, we can hear you now.
I was asking, based on your high-rise study, the foundations of high-rise, is there anything which is not in sync with what I am telling you right now and you need to clarify? Or even forget your high-rise, whatever basements you have seen around, whatever construction you have seen around, if there is some kind of thing that you have observed which is not, agreeing with what we are discussing over here and needs to be clarified. See, one thing is very sure, as architects, we cannot afford to look at these subjects, though they are engineering subjects and all, we cannot afford to look at them as lay people. We cannot afford to be considered as a lay person by other professionals like engineers and all. Okay. So at least the terminology, the like for example, usage of the term construction joint versus expansion joint versus seismic joints. These terminologies we have to be careful when we are using these terms. We have to be precise about their usage. We need to understand what they mean. Yeah, that's number one. Number two is about the overall understanding of the dimensionality of what the wall thicknesses should be, the slab thicknesses should be. Though at least there should be some sense of the dimensionality of these components. And number three is the construct of it itself, the sequence of operation. Now, the reason why I didn't show you one single kind of operation flow is because then you get jacketed and you can't think, because this is as much, this designing the construct of a building is as much part of the design process as the abstract conceptualization. Okay, so you need to inculcate this, कि okay ये इस तरह से भी हो सकता है, this can be done this way also. So your design decisions have to be beyond much more than the visual kind of decisions that you are taking. So see, it's like a performance, it's like a magician who goes on the stage. Yes, for the lay people, it is the most important thing is how you are presenting it and how you make it appealing to the, how you excite the audience. But how that illusion or whatever you are presenting, how that works is the professional's job. Okay. So if there is any kind of terminology which and for that reason you need to be constantly alert and start absorbing as much information from the field visits, whatever sites that you have visited and all. Question those sites, and if there are some things that which are not agreeing to you, let's bring to the classroom and discuss it out. You have already done so many. You have done your in your this COVID times. I don't know. It has been impossible to go to the sites, but previously you would have gone to some site visits or something. Bring it to this discussion in the classroom. Yeah, and if you have not done that, try to identify a site near your house. At least start visiting on your own. Start looking at the sites, monitor the construction sites, looking at it, see how things work on the site. Construction is at least the basic construction is best understood by doing a lot of site case examples, going to the site and learning from the site. Yeah. Should we call it a day? I think it's been a long session. Was it useful or it was too long? Should I next time I don't talk so much in detail? What is it?
Yeah, I think it was useful.
Okay.